Well, we have had a failed nuclear plant in the neighborhood. The Zimmer plant, which was built from the late 60s into the early 80s, in this area was an utter catastrophe. It cost Ohio ratepayers billions of dollars and taxpayers billions of dollars. And ultimately, after being almost, what they said, 97% complete, it was abandoned and had to be converted to coal. This was after, a multi-decade situation. So we think essentially this is the same thing. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and just expecting a different result. There's no indicator that new nuclear plants are being built any more efficiently or cost effectively than the old ones were. So we think this project is doomed to failure. Nuclear technology has failed as an energy source after 50 years. After a half century of experience, the nuclear industry has nowhere to take its high-level waste. It cannot get private insurance, and it cannot guarantee a fuel source. So in the long term, it also, by the way, can't get private funding to build new reactors. So we believe this project is doomed from the start, and we're sort of saddened to see so much resources going into a failed technology when new ones obviously work so well, which means wind and solar efficiency and so on.
Ohio has two other nuclear plants. There have been some problems, but they are in full operation right now. What's the matter with that?
Well, actually the two nuclear plants in Ohio are utter catastrophes. Perry plant is the only reactor in the United States we know of to have been damaged by an earthquake. And the Davis-Besse plant, of course, had its reactor pressure vessel eaten almost all the way through by a boric acid leak. So we believe that the Perry and Davis-Besse plants are poster children for the failure of nuclear power. We don't see why anyone would want to repeat that.
But those two plants are operating right now. People are getting electricity from them. There haven't been any recent safety problems with them. So how do you combat people saying, hey, those are working?
Except that the problem with Davis-Besse, among other things, is that because of Davis-Besse and Perry, the electric rates in northern Ohio are among the highest in the nation. And they were headed in that direction down here with the Zimmer plant until it was converted. The areas that do not have nuclear plants around the country uniformly have lower electric rates than those places that do, and northern Ohio is a case in point. So the Perry and Davis-Besse plants are arguments against building any new nuclear plant down here in southern Ohio. And we are appalled actually to see any resources going into this when wind and solar and tidal, geothermal, increased efficiency, biofuels, all of them are working so well. Ohio actually has good usable wind in northern Ohio, and in southern Ohio we have water and we have biofuels, and there's no reason to do anything else.
The uranium enrichment plant that is the site for this proposed new nuclear power plant, it had safety problems, and hundreds of people in this area fallen ill, and a lot of them blame the plant for that. But despite that, the people around here tend to say, we like the idea of 4,000 construction jobs and all the spin-offs. How do you respond to that?
The people here in the area would do much better off economically and with jobs if the money proposed to go into the nuclear plant would go into renewables and efficiency. The nuclear plant jobs are temporary. They talk about hiring X thousand people to build the thing, but once it's open, if it does open, which we don't believe it will, but eventually it's only down to 400 jobs. Whereas renewables, wind, solar, tidal, geothermal, increased efficiency, those jobs are essentially permanent. They are ongoing. And what's happened here is that once again, the nuclear industry has jumped in front of the green revolution, stopping the renewable technologies that would really work. And unfortunately, that's where the jobs are lost, is when the money goes into nuclear instead of into renewables.
Don't you have a tough time these days with some people saying, look, we hate all the carbon pollution, we're cracking down on carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide and particulates, and a nuclear plant doesn't put that out. The backers of the nuclear plant stress that. Isn't that a tough argument for you to combat?
Nuclear power plants have absolutely no solving capability for the carbon dioxide problem. Nuclear plants emit carbon dioxide in the course of their fuel cycle. Mining uranium, milling uranium, enriching uranium, transporting the fuel, and then dealing with it afterwards. All of them emit carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, in addition to which nuclear plants create huge amounts of waste heat on their own. We've had instances now in France and in Alabama and elsewhere that nuclear plants have had to shut because they're dumping too much hot water into the rivers that are being used to cool them. So nuclear power is actually a contributor to global warming as opposed to wind power, solar, and the other renewable sources.
Okay, but compared to coal plants, I know you don't like coal plants, and I know you don't like nuclear plants, but just, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, backwards the nuclear are trying to just compare those two and talk about the carbon pollution. And on that count, just the carbon pollution alone, don't you have to at least concede that nuclear puts off less carbon than the coal plants?
No, because the resources that go into nuclear are so overwhelming and so inefficient that using those resources to build renewables is what's really about. And we don't see those resources going into coal. We don't believe in clean coal. There's no such thing as clean coal. It's an oxymoron, just like safe nuclear. And so nuclear power, unfortunately, is a capital sink. Every dollar wasted on a nuclear plant could otherwise have saved 7 times as much in carbon emissions if we're put into renewables. So we believe nuclear is a huge problem. It is not a trade-off with coal. There's just no reason to build new nuclear plants. One thing you have to remember about new nuclear plants is that this plant, for example, will take 5 to 10 years to license, 5 to 10 years to build. So it won't come online, even under the optimum circumstances for the company, for at least a decade or two. Whereas the renewable investments come back and start giving a payoff within a year. And so if you're talking about getting off coal, the way to do it is to not spend your energy dollars building plants that may never come online, and certainly won't come online in less than a decade. They have to go to immediate solutions, and that's why nuclear is no trade-off with coal.
I was going to ask you about the, I don't need it on tape, but